that I could pay nothing but the blood of Jesus. We're singing, oh, precious is the flow that makes me white as snow. It was no bound. I know it was nothing that we could do, no word that we could say, that we could pay, nothing but the blood of Jesus. It was nothing but the blood of Jesus. It was nothing but your blood, my Jesus. It was nothing but your blood, my Jesus. If you are for me, who can be against me? If you are with me, whom shall I fear? His heart adores me. I am safe. I am loved. I am healed. I am safe. I am loved. I am healed. I am safe. I am loved. I am healed. I am safe. I am loved. I am healed.
S. I think we were going to try S first. Okay. And I thought
so one of the hardest things to do
and that's a lot of
when you're doing this thing virtually, boy, Jason boy, is you don't make anybody laughing at your joke. Because say a joke, if anybody laugh. But something I'm accustomed to. I mean, even when I hosted it physically, nobody laugh at my joke anyhow. So it doesn't make no difference. But I just say now, but I saw Karen, thank you, my dear. Said simple case send now virtual laugh. I so appreciate that. The encouragement. That is so nice of you, my dear. And she's so genuine too. She sent me, she set up herself by the way to her. She sent me a picture of what she's having, what she bought, and she asked me how much for it, and I gave her a price. So we know that simple case.
That was the beauty about it. I want to start it off.
Don't want to hear you. We have 37 people here right now. Good evening for those who just joining us. I'm Roger Dibert. I am not your host for this evening. Yes, smile about that. I'm just here to just buy the time and just welcome you into the room and to tell you that we have a lot of stuff on sale that's at your fridge. And our rule for this evening is that you visit your fridge, you take out whatever you want to have, and whatever you believe the cost of it you would have paid for it, you put that amount in a jar on top of the fridge, and whatever you need physically, that'll be your next offering for church. Yeah. Custom washing areas are located somewhere in your house, which I sincerely hope you know where they are. If you don't, please make yourself familiar with them now. Do not venture outdoors. Approaching 9 o'clock. We do not want anybody using the washrooms and be arrested. Try one and it's 40 people here. These are the early birds. It's now 5 to 8.
1 minute, Roger. 1 minute, huh?
1 minute? Okay, who want the 1 minute there, boy? Somebody getting ready. Somebody like excited about this thing, boy. Now, as you'll see on the form, it's either you need, but probably two things. A quick finger to type, knowledge of the Bible, or Google. Because everybody go and Google the question anyhow. Alright, and you go and Google and don't try that. Or you go and type and look for the answer somewhere on Google, Bing, wherever all you have, and type in the answer. But it all that's what it's about speed. It's about some speed and getting the answers. The first person to get it correct gets 5 points. The second person will get starts at 8, but it doesn't seem so. And we'll see how many questions probably Jay, our host, will allow us to do during the course of the show. I know my host is here. This is something we just springing on you right now, Mrs. Host. I don't want to reveal the name of the host yet. But if it is you want to go during the course of the show, we want to drop another question, and that's fine by me. All right? Depending on how things go, we may or may not get all 5 questions there. But it's the start, something new we try. All right? So you ready, Jay? Are you ready? Jason gone, boy.
Second, 30 seconds.
Alan, you ready, boy?
Almost, Mr. Beefpot. Give me a 30
All right.
seconds.
I'm putting the link in the chat. Don't click, well, if you want, you can click on it from now. That's fine. That's the link. If you look in the chat room, you'll see it there. You just touch the blue writing, and that will take you. So why we can't get a prize every week? Okay, very good. We have a question in the chat. Mr. Nigel Figaro has asked, why, Mr. Nigel Figaro, you have to be a madman, knowing that I hear. So we're going to have a prize this week, sponsored by Mr. Nigel Figaro. So whoever, because today is our first, no problem, that's fine. So whoever scores the top at the end of today's show, because it's our first, whoever comes out on top will be getting a prize sponsored by Mr. Nigel Figaro. Thank you, sir, Mr. Figaro. We are eternally indebted to you. Good. So soon as Jay is ready, he's going to put up the question. It's, of course, the first one is the easiest of all. It's an easy question. You didn't have to Google. I'll give you a clue too. The answer has 6 letters. No, sorry, 4 letters. The answer has 4 letters. Okay? Good. Oh, no, not one. You see, you bring it up in a PowerPoint, and you'll be able to see the next one. I gotta tell you. Right. That's your question. That's your question. That's your question. Type the form. Let me see. Let me go to the form now. Let me see how things looking here, boy J. Let me see. No responses yet. No responses. 1 has come in. Good. 2. Oh, that's one. Sorry. 1 response. 1 response. Somebody, whoever got in that one. 3. We're up to 3 responses. 4. I'm sure everybody's going to get this one correct, right? We're up to 5. I didn't check the time you started. When is that minute up? Jay was checking time, boy. You can tell what time you set it up. I'll close it off at 8.
Yeah.
You're up to 5 responses.
We have
6. Did I close off at 10 or I close off after a minute? Giving people the chance because it's the first time, you know. It's the first time. Remember to, whatever name you use today, if you want to continue with the challenge, you're going to have to use that name or handle all the way through to make sure the points go to you. So remember, whatever name you're using, if you're going to use simple K, as some people use, remember to use simple K all the time. Yeah? Bam, bam. Right, that's question 1, closed off. We got 9 responses. We got 9 responses in for question 1. Good. So Jay, you can take it down. Be careful when you're taking it down that you don't see the second question. Be careful when you're taking it down, you don't see the second question. That's the thing, remember. You don't want them to get somebody put it in the chat. No, you're not putting it in the chat. All right? Some people putting it in the chat, so they gave the answers in the chat. It doesn't go there, it has to go on the form. That little blue writing that starts with HTTPS dot dot dash dash slash slash, sorry, forms, office, and so on and so on. Yeah, that's what you're touching to give the answer. Okay? That's what you're touching to give the answer. And the form will calculate everything for us. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is now 8 p.m. The magical hour. The magical hour of 8 p.m. is upon us. And mine is a simple task, but most honorable task to introduce to you our host for this evening, who will take us through all that we have to offer. All right? She sent me a wonderful little bio here. Let me just bring it up. Good morning and happy. Oh, sorry, that was what you wrote it better. Right. Our host, Miss Syntyche Bishop, is an actress with the National Theatre Arts Company of Trinidad and Tobago. She's a singer, vocal and acting coach, and more recently, the host of the YouTube series, A Conversation with Ty. She's a lover of life and people and believes in embracing new opportunities. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, mosquitoes and flies, please all put your hands together and welcome to the floor our host for this evening, Miss Syntyche Bishop. Madam,
hello. My goodness, thank you so much for that lovely and energetic introduction. Hi, everybody. I am Syntyche. I'll be your host for today. Firstly, let me see. I want to welcome everybody. The Parish of St. Stephen specifically wants to welcome everybody to the chat room, a space where we as Christians can hang out, talk, learn about many different topics, and grow together. Yeah? So, remember that this is not the only space that you can view this conversation. I want to let you all know that you can bring your friends, bring your auntie, bring your nenen, bring everybody, tell them, go to the Facebook page, Anglican Outlook, or to the YouTube page, Anglican Outlook TV, where they can view it, because now this is not the only space. You want everybody to get this information. Today is the day that I think everybody has been anticipating, this very moment where we get to talk about the vaccines. Oh, good. All right. So I don't want to waste any time. So now, let me introduce, without further ado, the feature speaker for today, which is Dr. Leanne Conyette-Bowen. Dr. Leanne Conyette-Bowen attained a Bachelor of Sciences honors degree from the Faculty of Natural Sciences, UWI St. Augustine, followed by the MB BS degree from the Faculty of Medicine, UWI St. Augustine. She worked primarily at the San Fernando General Hospital for approximately 15 years, from internship to her present position as a specialist medical officer in the Department of Internal Medicine. In 2014, Dr. Conyette-Bowen successfully completed her postgraduate studies, Doctor of Medicine, Internal Medicine at the Faculty of Medical Science, UWI St. Augustine. Dr. Conyette-Bowen is a council member and past president of the Trinidad and Tobago Medical Association, as well as a board member of the Trinidad and Tobago Heart Foundation and Alzheimer's Association of Trinidad and Tobago. Over the last 6 years, Dr. Conyette-Bowen has been an associate lecturer attached to the Department of Clinical Sciences, Faculty of Medical Sciences, UWI, and was actively involved in research with published papers, regional and international. Yolanda, you have plenty to get tonight. Oh, I'm excited. He was with us last week and we gained so much knowledge about the COVID-19 virus that everybody, all wanted to know so much. And now this week, to be here again with tell us more about the vaccine that so many people have been dreading. Yeah? So, without further ado, the beautiful, the lovely Dr. Conyette-Bowen. Welcome.
Thank you, Syntyche. Good evening, Father. Good evening, everyone. And welcome to our second session on the vaccine. Let me share my screen.
I don't know what happened.
Supposed to give me ability to share, please.
A number of men and women who victims to the virus. There's a possibility of having the majority to continue to serve the public and keep the country safe.
I'm still unable to share. I don't send like you.
Hold 1 second, please, Doctor.
Sure, no problem.
Can't find her. There you go.
Thank you.
Welcome. Before the doctor begins, I will ask you to mute your microphone. Could you please mute your microphones? Thank you very much.
The pharmacy they have.
Okay, everyone, good evening again. So let's talk vaccines. So germs are all around us, in the environment and in our bodies. When a person is susceptible and they encounter a harmful organism, whether it is a virus or bacteria or parasite or fungus, it can cause disease and it can even cause death. These disease-causing organisms are called pathogens. So our body has many ways of defending against pathogens or defending against these disease-causing organisms. So for example, we have our barrier immunity. So for example, we have our skin that blocks the entry of pathogens. We have the mucus when we cough that helps trap and expel pathogens. And we have these microscopic hairs that line our nose called cilia that move away debris from the lungs.
Right.
All these barriers work to prevent pathogens from entering into our body. But sometimes a pathogen does infect the body and our immune system becomes triggered. So our body's defenses start. So for example, we have our innate, our inborn immunity. If, for example, we get a cut, our innate immunity responds with special immune cells, which will seal the cut and remove the foreign debris and pathogens that made it through. Now, we also have another form of immunity called adaptive immunity. And this adaptive immunity comes into play when the innate immunity is just not enough. And this adaptive immunity occurs through special types of cells. So we have T cells, and T cells basically kill the pathogens, and T cells also stimulate the B cells to activate or to produce antibodies. So let me explain this further. Now, each pathogen or each disease-causing organism is made up of several subparts, and these parts are unique to that specific pathogen and unique to the disease it causes. The subpart of the pathogen, so if we look at the envelope of this virus here, this subpart that stimulates our immune system is called the antigen. So let us look at this diagram here. Look at the virus that causes measles. Look at the part on the surface of the cell that stimulates the immune system. This is the antigen for this virus. And this antigen, which looks kind of like bullet shape, is different from the antigen that causes flu, and is different from the antigen we see in the chickenpox virus. Now, that antigen is what stimulates our immune system. In addition to antigen, we have antibodies. Now, the antibodies are basically what our bodies produce in response to the pathogen's antigens. So these antibodies are like the soldiers, and they're the soldiers in our immune system. And each soldier, so look at the soldier here, responds specifically to a specific antigen or a specific subunit of the virus that stimulates our immune response. So the antibodies or the soldiers, each antibody is trained to recognize a specific antigen or a specific target. And in reality, we have thousands of different antibodies in our body. Now, what happens is when our body is exposed to an antigen for the first time, it takes our immune system some time to respond and to produce these antibodies to target that antigen. So what happens when we're waiting on the immune system to respond? Basically, if the person is vulnerable or the person is susceptible, the person can become ill. But once we have our antibodies or our soldiers to produce in response to the antigen, these antibodies work with the rest of our immune system to basically destroy the pathogen and stop the disease. So once the body produces soldiers or produces antibodies in response to the antigen, it creates some special cells called memory cells. And these memory cells remain alive even after the pathogen is defeated by the antibodies. Therefore, if our body is exposed to the same pathogen or the same disease-causing organism more than once, the memory cells will remember the pathogen, and the memory cells will stimulate the antibody response, and the soldiers will work faster and more effective than the first time around. So today we came to talk about vaccines, and let's look at the vaccine against SARS-CoV-2 infection. Normally, vaccines contain a weakened or inactive part of a particular organism, including part of the antigen. Remember, that's the part that stimulates an immune response. Now, the newer vaccines contain a blueprint for producing the antigens rather than these antigens themselves. But regardless of what the vaccine contains, the vaccines prompt our immune system to respond. Please note that it will not cause a disease in the person receiving the vaccine. Now, some vaccines require multiple doses, whether it's weeks apart or months apart, but this is needed at times to allow for the production of these long-lived antibodies, these soldiers, and to develop memory cells. Now, vaccines cause the body to produce the T cells and the B cells and the memory cells. And that way, the memory cells especially will remember how to fight the virus in the future. Now, it typically takes a few weeks after vaccination to form these special cells. So it's therefore possible that if someone if someone is going to get a vaccine, a COVID virus, a COVID-19 vaccine, and they get exposed to COVID-19 infection just before or just after vaccination, they can get sick. Why? Because the vaccine did not get enough time to provide protection. Sometimes after vaccination, the process of building immunity can cause symptoms like fever and fatigue. Please know that these symptoms are normal, and these symptoms are signs that the body is building an immune response. Now, most vaccines have been in use for decades, and all vaccines must go through this extensive, rigorous testing to ensure that it is safe and it can be introduced into a country's vaccination program. So first, the vaccine is tested on animals to evaluate its safety and its potential to prevent disease. And after the preclinical testing or the animal testing, it goes through 3 stages. We have phase 1 here, where the vaccine is given to a small number of volunteers, like 10 to 100 volunteers, to assess its safety, to confirm that it generates an immune response, and determine the right dose. Now, this small group of volunteers is about 10 to 100, so it's a really small group, but they're usually young, healthy volunteers. And after phase 1, vaccination trials go through to phase 2. Now, in phase 2, the vaccine is given to several hundred volunteers, from 100 all the way up to 1,000 volunteers. Again, to assess its safety and to assess its ability to generate an immune response. Now, the participants in phase 2 here are different from those in 1. Remember, phase 1 had young, healthy volunteers. In phase 2, the participants have the same characteristics as the people for whom the vaccine is intended. And then there is stage 3. Now here the vaccine is given to thousands of volunteers, from 1,000 to 10,000 or tens of thousands of volunteers. And the aim is basically to determine if the vaccine is effective against a disease that is designed to protect against. And the other aim is to study the safety of this vaccine in a larger group of people. And this phase 3 is usually done across multiple countries or at multiple sites within a country. And it is to ensure that the findings apply to different populations. Now, in this phase 3, just as in phase 2, there's a control group. So that is, there are a group of persons who will not get the vaccine. And that is to determine whether the effects of the vaccinated group are due to the vaccine or if it is by chance. Now, a vaccine must be proven to be safe and effective across a broad population before it gets approved and before it is introduced into a national immunization program. And even after that, further monitoring occurs. Trials will only be halted, so the vaccination program, the trial will only be halted if a certain number of people actually contract the disease. Now, with this background information, let's start looking at what you all really want to know. Let's start looking at some specific vaccines against this SARS-CoV-2 infection. And we will start off with Astrazeneca Vaccine. Now, the University of Oxford partnered with a British-Swedish company called Astrazeneca to develop and test a coronavirus vaccine. Now, the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine, we spoke about it last week, is the virus is studied with proteins. And these proteins are what it uses to enter into our cells. Now, the Oxford AstraZeneca group, they basically use the virus genetic instructions. They basically use the blueprint of this virus that you've seen on your screen here for building spike proteins. So what the researchers did was that they added the gene for the coronavirus spike protein. So the blueprint for building the spike protein, they took this gene and they added to vectors, another virus, something called an adenovirus. Now, what are adenoviruses? These are common viruses that could cause like cold and flu-like symptoms. Now, the Oxford Astrazeneca team, they use a modified version of this adenovirus. What they actually used was a chimpanzee adenovirus called ChAdOx1. They engineered this in such a way that when this vaccine gets injected into our deltoids and our arms, this vaccine will not replicate. It is a harmless virus that works basically as a vector. Now, this adenovirus, in which they put the blueprint for building the spike protein, has a very tough protein coat. So this coat you're seeing here is a very tough protein coat that helps to protect the genetic material that we're seeing inside here. Because of this very tough protein coat, this Oxford Astrazeneca vaccine does not have to stay frozen. The vaccine is expected to last for about 6 months when refrigerated at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius. Now, look at this little flow chart here. After this vaccine, remember the blueprint is here inside this harmless vaccine, is injected into our deltoids, into our arms. What it does, the vaccine enters our cells and stimulates the cells to produce the spike protein. Remember, there's the spike protein here. So when our body realizes that the cells are producing the spike protein, what do you think will happen? Instantly, an alarm is switched on and our body recognizes, wait, this is a foreign target. So what do you think happens next? Our immune system is activated, start to produce T cells, start to produce B cells, start to produce antibodies, start to produce memory cells. The T cells, as we mentioned before, these cells will try to kill the cells with the spike protein. The T cells also stimulate the B cells to produce antibodies and to produce memory cells. And the advantage of these memory cells is that if the person is exposed to COVID-19 virus in the future, they already have the antibodies and they already have the T cells that will be triggered really quickly to fight the virus. And please remember, as I mentioned before, the process of building immunity can cause symptoms like fever and fatigue and pain at the injection site. These symptoms are all normal, and they're basically signs that the body is developing an immune response. Now, I know what you're thinking, because many people asked this question before. How did they make this AstraZeneca vaccine so quickly? Now, the biggest misconception is the work began on this vaccine when this pandemic began last year. But in fact, after the Ebola outbreak, so we go back to 2014 and 2016 at the Ebola outbreak, in which 11,000 people died because of what they classify as a slow response. The researchers or the scientists came up with a plan to tackle the next big one. And they call this virus disease X. So this disease X is the unknown infection that would take the world by surprise. So now these researchers basically were aware of the fact that conventional vaccines use a weakened or killed form of the original infection. But then these were slow to develop. Now instead, what the Oxford researchers did was that they took a common cold virus that infected the chimpanzees and they engineered this virus so it became a building block upon which they can make a vaccine that will be against almost anything. So even before COVID-19, there were 330 persons were given vaccines with this building block, with this chimpanzee adenovirus Oxford, this building block. So when the reports came of this viral pneumonia in Wuhan, and scientists after 2 weeks realized that the virus that caused this viral pneumonia is a coronavirus, the scientists said, but we know about this coronavirus already. We know the biology of this virus because there was a SARS outbreak in 2002 and there was a MERS outbreak in 2012. So with the background and the biology of this virus and the fact that they already had this building block, they constructed the vaccine. This vaccine went through every stage you mentioned before. It went through testing on animals, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And in fact, for this Oxford Astrazeneca vaccine, phase 3 included 30,000 plus volunteers. And at the end of phase 3, they found out that this vaccine provided 79% vaccine efficacy at preventing symptomatic COVID-19 infection. They noticed that this vaccine provided 80% efficacy in persons over the age of 65 years. They noticed that this vaccine overall had a good safety profile. So then the WHO came up with interim recommendations. And the date of these recommendations I'm using here is the 21st of April, 2021. So these are the WHO interim recommendations for the Oxford Astrazeneca COVID-19 vaccine. They said it's recommended for persons over the age of 18. It's recommended to be given as 2 doses, 0.5 mils each. It's given intramuscularly into the deltoid muscle, 4 to 12 weeks apart. What? In light of the fact that there's increased efficacy with longer interdose interval, the WHO recommended that the vaccine be given between week 8 and week 12. Now, currently, there's no evidence indicating that there's need for a booster dose, but again, research is ongoing. WHO recommended that we don't interchange our vaccines and that both doses in the vaccine should be administered with the same product. And there must be at least 14 days between co-administration of the COVID-19 AstraZeneca vaccine and any other vaccine against any other condition. It is contraindicated in persons with a history of anaphylaxis. So people who have a really bad allergic reaction, we will not recommend that these persons take the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. But if you're over the age of 65, or if you have comorbidities, WHO recommends that you take this vaccine. And when we talk about comorbidities, we're talking about obesity, we're talking about cardiovascular disease, we're talking about lung disease, we're talking about diabetes, because persons with these comorbidities have an increased risk of developing severe COVID-19 infection. Persons who have retrovirus infection or HIV infection, persons who are immunocompromised, persons who have autoimmune disease, the World Health Organization recommends that you take this vaccine. But they also put in their recommendations that you please discuss your case with your healthcare provider before vaccination. All right. What about if someone is pregnant and has the COVID-19 and is thinking about the COVID-19 vaccine? Now, pregnant women with COVID-19 are at increased risk of developing severe disease compared with the non-pregnant women in the same reproductive age group. COVID-19 alone in pregnancy can cause preterm birth, and they can cause the neonates or the babies to require ICU care. There's an increased risk of serious outcomes of COVID if you're a pregnant woman and you're over the age of 35, or if you're a pregnant woman with increased BMI, or if you're a pregnant person with existing comorbidities. But please note that there's limited safety data. There's no need for a pregnancy test to be done before you get the vaccine, and there's no need to delay pregnancy, or there's no need to terminate pregnancy because of the vaccination. What about women who are breastfeeding? Now, if you're breastfeeding, we're thinking that vaccine efficacy is expected to be the same as in normal adults. But there's no data on the effects of the vaccine on breastfed children. However, they use the fact that the vaccine is not live, and therefore it is biologically and clinically unlikely to pose a risk to the breastfeeding child. But please note that because of the limited safety and efficacy data, the local Ministry of Health, Trinidad and Tobago Ministry of Health, does not allow vaccination of pregnant women or breastfeeding mothers. But what about persons who had COVID-19 before? There's a common conversation. Now, if someone previously had COVID-19, whether you were symptomatic or asymptomatic, they still need to be vaccinated because immunity can weaken over time and the vaccine can help strengthen this. Now, usually within 3 to 6 months after your first natural infection, symptomatic reinfection is uncommon. But data is now showing us that you can get reinfected even though you had an initial infection, especially in a setting where there are variants. And the variant we have locally is this P1 variant here, the Brazil variant. And also, the guidelines state that persons who are currently acutely ill with COVID-19 infection should not be vaccinated until after they have recovered from their acute illness. And the other question we always hear, Doc, what about the blood clots? Now, it's called VITT, V-I-T-T, vaccine-induced thrombosis and thrombocytopenia, big words. But basically, this is a very rare adverse event. It's characterized by thrombosis, which means blood clots, and thrombocytopenia, which basically means low platelet counts, occurring after the Oxford Astrazeneca vaccine. Between the 9th of December 2020 and the 5th of May 2021, there were 260 cases out of a total of 30.8 million doses of vaccines administered in the UK. So that's 260 out of 30.8 million cases. So you understand how very rare this adverse event is. The UK, European Union, and Scandinavian countries, they have also reported that the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine appears to be associated with a rare case of serious blood clots, including clots in the brain. And this occurs 4 to 20 days after vaccination. And let me tell you again, this is rare. The prevalence is like up to 1 in 1 million persons. Both complications are rare. Now, mind you, at this time, the WHO, the World Health Organization, when they weigh the benefits with the risks, considering that the benefits of AstraZeneca vaccine outweigh the risks, the World Health Organization recommends that we continue vaccination. So that's the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. Let's talk briefly about the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine. Now, the Moderna and Pfizer vaccine offers a 95% efficacy at preventing disease and a 94, look at this diagram here, 94% reduction in your risk of being hospitalized 14 or more days after the second dose. But how does this vaccine work? So scientists take part of the vaccine genetic code and they turn it into a vaccine that they inject into the patient. So you understand how this is different from the AstraZeneca vaccine. When this vaccine enters our cells, it tells our cells to produce spike protein. Remember the spike protein on the surface of the virus. When our body realizes that this spike protein is being produced, our immune system becomes activated. Our body starts to produce antibodies, start to activate T cells, start to produce B cells, and produce our memory cells. Therefore, if a person is exposed to SARS-CoV-2 infection, our antibodies or our soldiers and our memory cells will become active, and they become active at a faster rate. Now the Moderna, so look at this table here. The Moderna as well as the Pfizer vaccines, their 2 doses are given of each. The Moderna vaccine, 2 doses, and the doses are given 28 days apart. The Pfizer vaccine, again, 2 doses given 21 days apart. Now, they both need extremely cold temperatures. The Pfizer vaccine requires temperatures from -80 to -60 degrees Celsius, which is colder than winter in Antarctica. And the Moderna vaccine needs cold temperatures, but less cold than the Pfizer vaccine. So temperatures like -20 degrees Celsius, which is like a regular freezer. Okay. And last but not least, let's talk about Sinopharm. Now, this Sinopharm vaccine was developed by the Beijing Institute of Biological Products, which is a subsidiary of the China National Biotech Group. So this Beijing Institute manufactured this vaccine, which is basically an inactivated whole viral vaccine. So it's totally different from the Moderna and Pfizer, which use the gene, which is totally different from the Oxford Astrazeneca, which is a viral vector, the chimpanzee, the harmless virus. So this Sinopharm vaccine, developed by the Beijing Institute, is an inactivated whole virus vaccine. There are over 65 million doses of this vaccine that have been given globally to date. Now, when they did a large multi-country phase 3 trial, remember we spoke about the phase 3 trials? When they did their large multi-country phase 3 trial, they showed that 2 doses given 21 days apart had an efficacy of about 79% against symptomatic SARS-CoV-2 infection. And this is 14 days after the second dose. The phase 3 trial also showed that vaccine efficacy against hospitalization was 79%. Now, rollout of this vaccine started locally last week, Friday, on the 21st of May. How does this vaccine work? They actually use the killed virus. So the vaccine is basically the killed virus, which when injected into the deltoid muscle of our arm, activates our immune system, stimulates the formation of T cells, stimulates the formation of B cells, and stimulates the formation of memory cells, so that our body could fight SARS-CoV-2 infection in the future if we are exposed. Now let's look at the recommendations for this Sinopharm vaccine. Just as we look at the recommendations for the AstraZeneca, these are WHO recommendations, interim recommendations, I should say, as of the 7th of May. Now the WHO recommend that this vaccine be used for persons over the age of 18 years. They also recommend that an interval of 3 to 4 weeks in between doses is necessary. If, for example, the second dose is recommended less than 3 weeks from the first dose, don't worry, there's no need for a repeat dose. If the second dose is delayed by more than 4 weeks, it should be given at the earliest possible opportunity. But all vaccinated persons with the Sinopharm vaccine should receive 2 doses 3 weeks apart. With respect to booster doses, this is presently being assessed. With respect to interchangeability with other COVID-19 vaccines, there's no data available, but the WHO said they recommend that the same product be used for both doses. And a minimum of 14 days in between administration of the vaccine and any other vaccine for any other condition is recommended. And this may be amended in the future because, as I mentioned before, studies are ongoing. If you have a history of anaphylaxis, a really bad allergic reaction to any component of the vaccine, you are not to take the Sinopharm vaccine. If you get the first Sinopharm vaccine and you develop an anaphylaxis reaction after this first vaccine, you should not receive the second vaccine. So when you go to the vaccination site, you will be observed for a period of at least 15 minutes after you get your vaccine. And this is as a precautionary measure, as during the study, after introduction to the deltoids, allergic reactions were observed. But please note, there were no severe hypersensitivity reaction. There was no anaphylaxis reaction caused by the vaccine recorded in the clinical trials. What about if you're over the age of 60 or if you're a person with comorbidity? The WHO guidelines recommend that you take the vaccine. And again, when we talk about comorbidity, this is because they found that persons who had increased body mass index or persons with cardiovascular disease or respiratory disease or lung disease and diabetes, these persons had a higher risk of developing severe COVID-19 infection. And the guidelines for the Sinopharm vaccine are quite similar with respect to pregnant women and women who are breastfeeding, are quite similar to what we saw with the Astrazeneca vaccine. But please note, the Trinidad and Tobago Ministry of Health does not advise pregnant women or women who are breastfeeding to get the vaccine at present. What about if you had previous SARS-CoV-2 infections? What if you had COVID before? Whether you were asymptomatic or symptomatic, vaccination should be offered. Now, there's no need to do viral testing for previous infection to decide on whether you want this vaccine. Okay? The data showed that within 3 to 6 months after an initial natural infection, whether you were symptomatic or asymptomatic, you can get symptomatic reinfection, especially if there are variants in the environment in which you are. So in other words, vaccination should be offered even if you had a previous SARS-CoV-2 infection. And just like with the AstraZeneca vaccine or all the other vaccines, if you have acute COVID-19 infection, you should not be vaccinated until after you've recovered. Now, at the end of the day, what we want herd immunity. And we've been hearing this term intermittently. Now, when someone becomes vaccinated, they are likely to be protected against the targeted disease. And in this case, we're talking about the SARS-CoV-2 infection. But with new pathogens, not everyone can be vaccinated because some persons, as we mentioned before, can have a severe allergic reaction or a severe anaphylaxis reaction. These persons can be protected if they live in and if they live amongst others who are vaccinated. When there's a large number of persons in a community vaccinated, the disease-causing organism, so in this case, COVID virus, has a hard time circulating because most of the people it encounters are immune. So the more persons vaccinated, the less likely that people who are unable to be protected by the vaccines can be exposed to the harmful pathogen. This is what herd immunity is all about. Now, please note, no single vaccine provides 100% protection. And herd immunity does not provide full protection to those who cannot be vaccinated. But with herd immunity, these people will have substantive protection, thanks to those around them who are being vaccinated. This is why we say that vaccination not only protects yourself, but it also protects your family and persons within your community who are unable to be vaccinated. And yes, even after you become vaccinated, you should still wear your mask. So before I end, I just have like 2 more slides. I want to put some facts into the myths we have been hearing. There's no microchip tracking. There's no nanotransducers associated with these vaccines. They will not track you. They will not gather your personal information to a database. The vaccines will not alter your DNA. There have been no studies, because people are talking about links between the COVID-19 vaccines and autism, and several studies have shown there's no link between these two. So remember that these vaccines I mentioned, there are many, many more vaccines, have all gone through rigorous assessment by the WHO before they were granted emergency use. So I want to think about everything I've discussed over the last probably 20, 25 minutes. And presently, we are giving the Cyanofarm vaccine. So if you're over the age of 60 years, or if you're under 60 with a comorbidity like hypertension or heart disease or diabetes or chronic lung disease, or if you're a healthcare worker, please consider this vaccine. The Ministry of Health has vaccination locations. Please call, please WhatsApp, and get your vaccine. So thank you very much for your attention.
No, thank you. Thank you very, very, very much. I had to laugh. I started to laugh at the end there because the only questions that I was coming to ask, the nano trip. Because so many people ask about that, right? So I was like, wow. I think I answered most of the questions for that. You answer most of I have some still, but I feel like I answered most of the questions. So thank you for that very, very
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So to just switch a bit, we're going to go back to one of the games that we were playing at the beginning, the Bible trivia. Just going to place a question on the screen really quickly before we get back into answering some questions, right? Because we have questions here still up, right?
Sure, yeah.
So take it away, Roger.
All right. So I need your assistance, people in this room. The person who won just now is actually issuing me a challenge that nobody could touch him now. So, you know, have the trigger fingers ready so that we can beat him. I think you all should know who I'm speaking about, who was, you know, being kind of cocky on the chat kind of thing about why we can't have a prize for every week. So I need your assistance to make sure he's put in his place. So I'm pasting the link again. Right, the link for the form is in the chat. And whenever the goodly and honorable Mr. Jason Allen, sir, you'll post the picture. Remember, click the blue writing and submit your answers. Mr. Jason Allen. Question 2. What was the first plague the Lord sent to Egypt? So I'm sure I'm hoping he was in the washroom and he wasn't able to, you know, click in as quickly as he did last time. You know. So responses, type in. Remember the same handle. You try to use, you don't try, you have to use the same name you use for the first question in order for your points to be tallied correctly. All right. So the link to respond is in the chat. We have only one response so far. Right. So as the responses are coming in, as I said, probably within the next minute and a half, I'll give people a chance to get familiar with the link, know where the chat room is, and so on. Click the link and enter responses. Syntyche, back to you.
So Hello again, everybody. Remember, as I said in the beginning, we have a form, a feedback form that we would love you to fill out, right? We're going to place it. It's going to be placed in the chat. And at the end of this is when we want you to fill it out. Yeah? So back to the questions. Now, anybody who actually has questions and wants to speak, could you please just put your hands up, give us a little wave, and we will get back to you. First question that I have. Someone actually wanted to know this, right, Doc? The vaccine. Persons living with HIV, are they able to take this vaccine?
Yep, it's recommended. And if you go to get your vaccine, you will see these wonderful forms by the Ministry of Health at all vaccination sites. And under persons who may get the Astrazeneca vaccine, they have a documented person with HIV, persons with autoimmune diseases, persons who are immunocompromised should be considered for vaccine, but please talk with your doctor before.
Okay, yes, you did specify that.
Yeah.
Presentation. Well, you know, a lot of people seem to want to do the vaccine, huh? But some people still a little wary, and they're wondering if when they go to health centers, if it's possible that when they go for vaccination, if they could possibly contract the virus.
Well, the good thing is that when you go for your vaccine, you'll be wearing your mask, you will be practicing social distancing, there's sanitizers everywhere, it's nice and orderly. I've worked at the vaccination site at the Savannah, and I've also worked at SAPA. And we minimize contact with other persons, basically. So we only let a certain number of persons to come in. If we have too many people in the registration area, we let you form an orderly line outside. I know my sister-in-law went for vaccination today, and the site she went to, they made them stay in their cars until the numbers of persons in the room was an acceptable number. So we have things in place to prevent you from socializing, and you still have to wash your hands, watch your distance, and wear your mask.
Okay, thank you. Oh, lovely, I see a hand. All right, Sister Althea, take it away because I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat box right now.
Oh, I didn't get to see those yet. Let me see. Mrs. Ogaro?
Yeah, Sister Althea. All right, so in the meantime, I'm going to continue with another question. So, women, well, I wouldn't say young women, but women in general, like some women are worried about taking the vaccine. They're wondering if this will affect them with childbearing later on in life.
No, definitely not.
Okay. Definitely not. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, definitely not.
Let me run to one of the questions over here. Right.
A question from the chat. How long does immunity from the vaccine last?
Well, that is presently being under investigation, which is why we can't say for sure right now if a booster vaccine is needed.
Okay. If an asymptomatic COVID patient, positive patient who is unaware of their status gets the vaccine, what would be their side effects, if there will be any?
But the person, there is a possibility that the person can feel ill, because remember the vaccine at that point in time would not have stimulated an immune response. So it is possible at that point in time the person can get fever and fatigue and the normal symptoms that we get with the vaccine. And that's because the vaccine did not get time to build an immune response to fight the COVID-19 infection that they, well, only found afterwards, I guess, that they had.
Another question. Have to wait for 6 months after COVID infection to take the vaccine? Somebody
right, so the guidelines
responded to that.
So the guidelines, okay. somebody respond. Let me just go on in. This is on the chat, Mrs. O'Gara?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Good. Oh yeah, Dr. Alfred Debas. Thank you very much.
Yes, she answered.
Doing a great job.
Thank you. Another question. Do you have to take Panadol multi before and after?
No, you don't have to take it before. You take it out. Just remember, if you get the symptoms like the fever and the flu or the injection site pain and redness, that is a normal response. That is a response that tells me that your body is stimulating an immune response. Your body is creating T cells and B cells and antibodies. It's okay when you get those symptoms to take your Panadol. But the symptoms are usually mild to moderate. Sometimes they last probably 24 to probably 48 hours. They're mild symptoms and they're normal symptoms.
Okay. Another question. Hi, I took my vaccine today.
Great.
I have an asthmatic son,
right,
who sleeps with me. I asked this question and got 2 different answers, which puzzled me. Can he sleep with me?
Yes, yes, he can. I'm trying to see the question to see exactly what the person was asking. If the son can sleep with you if you got the vaccine? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have 4 persons in the chat with their hands up. The first one is Simple K, and after Simple K, we'll go with Philip. So Simple K, could you unmute and ask your question, please?
Then we'll go back to the chat because I have some more questions. Thank you, Jay.
Simple K, Karen, you have a question? All right, if not, we'll go to Philip. Philip, do you have a question for the doctor?
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. My question is, I listened very carefully. Can you say if all the trials related to these vaccines are completed?
The vaccines will not have been approved by the WHO for emergency use if they didn't undergo the preclinical phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials.
Okay, so the reason I'm asking is that before coming here 10 minutes,
yes,
I downloaded from the NIH website, clinicaltrials.gov, 3 documents. One for Moderna, one for Pfizer, and one for Astrazeneca. And I wouldn't go through all of them, but what I would read is just a one-liner which says for the Moderna that the estimated completion date for the trials is October 2022. For AstraZeneca, it is 2023. And for Pfizer, the completion date for the trials is 2023. So
remember that these vaccines that we are using now were approved for emergency use. Okay, so to be approved for emergency use by the World Health Organization, they have to go through the preclinical phase 1, phase 2, phase 3.
Yeah,
it's compulsory.
But what the documentation is saying is that the trials are not completed until 2023. So what that is saying to us is that they are still experimental.
They're not experimental, they're still doing studies. So we still don't know if a booster is necessary. We still don't know what someone's response will be after 1 year. We still don't know about the effects of the virus on pregnant women or women who are breastfeeding. They're still studying those. We still don't know about persons who have an autoimmune disease. They're studying. So it's not experimental. They're still studying because our population, patients have different comorbidities and they have to study each one.
Okay,
that's why even if you look under the Ministry of Health, our local Ministry of Health page, and they mention that at this point in time, the vaccine is not approved for pregnant women and breastfeeding women because they are still doing studies.
Okay, we have Lennox and Miss Woods with their hands up. So Lennox, you go ahead, and then Miss Woods will follow. Then we'll go back to the chat.
Yes. Good night, Dr. Conyette.
Hi.
My question has to do with the safety of the vaccines. Based on your presentation here tonight, you seem to indicate that all 3 or 4 of these vaccines are very safe. But my understanding is that the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
Right.
So all that you say is very nice, but I want to present to you some statistics. I am looking at it right now.
Sure.
These statistics, this particular statistics come from Vigilance, which is a European vaccine injury and death database.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, before I proceed, I should ask, does the Ministry of Health in Trinidad and Tobago have a vaccine adverse events reporting system database? Do we have that?
But I know in the hospital, if any adverse events occur, we have an adverse event protocol. We have some forms that we have to submit that goes to quality and goes up the chain.
Right.
So
I'm not talking about that.
Yes, for the vaccine, because even after we got our vaccine, because we were one of the first set to get vaccine, we were contacted to find out our symptoms, and we were contacted for up to a week after.
Okay, fine. That is good, but it is not made. It is not shared with the public.
Right.
The Vigilance, right, database is shared with the public, and the CDC vaccine adverse events reporting system is shared with the public. I just want to quote for you some statistics that negates a lot of what you said with regards to vaccine safety.
Okay.
Vigilance is reporting as of May 8th, 2021, 405,259 people have become injured from the vaccine.
Injured?
10,000 is serious injuries. 10,000.
What are these serious injuries?
They include blood clots. If you go to the database, you can see there's a whole list. There's a whole list of over 100 different types of
But with which vaccine, sir?
I will break it down for you. The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine.
Let's talk about the Astrazeneca and the Sinopharm, the ones that we have.
The AstraZeneca, right? No. The reason why I'm quoting Pfizer and Moderna and AstraZeneca is because in the flyer that you all sent out, you said you were dealing with all of the vaccines.
Right.
So I am saying, the statistics here show Pfizer-BioNTech, 170,528 injuries, 5,368 deaths. I want to say here that the CDC and the Vigilance have acknowledged that their statistics only constitute about 1% of the actual number of adverse events reports.
Right.
So which means the actual number of adverse events, vaccine adverse events reports is 90 to 100 times the statistics here. With regards to Moderna, there are 22,985 injuries, 2,865 deaths.
Right.
With regards to AstraZeneca, there's a whooping 208,873 injuries were reported, along with 2,102 deaths. Now, as I said, and with regards to Johnson & Johnson, 2,800, because Johnson & Johnson now come in the scene. So what we are saying, while you are explaining to us the theory of how the vaccine works, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. How do you explain all these injuries and deaths? Among some of the most common injuries are musculoskeletal and connective tissue disorders, blood and lymphatic disorders, gastrointestinal disorders, respiratory and thoracic disorders, and vascular disorders. These are about some of the more serious ones, including blood clots. So when we look at these statistics, what do I am as a citizen, and in addition to this, you had more than 20 countries in Europe suspending the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine. How do you explain that? Now, this is not theory. As I told you, I can give you the website, right? Udra Vigilance. That's the European Vaccine Injury and Death Database. And then, of course, you have VAERS, which is the CDC's Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System. Let me quote from the CDC.
Sorry to disturb, but we are pressed for time. So could you just pose the question so that...
All right, okay, I've made that, okay, I have presented that. I want to say one thing and then I'll close off. You said that the vaccines are safe. Are you aware that in the Moderna vaccine, there is a substance described as SM-102?
No, continue. No, I'm not.
All right, well, if you go to the European Medicine Agency's database or the CDC's database, and you look up the fact sheets on the Moderna, the Pfizer, all these vaccines, the fact sheets are there. With regards to Moderna, it says that one of the ingredients of the Moderna vaccine is a substance called SM-102. Let me read for you briefly. I wouldn't be long, and I'll finish my thing here. What the OSHA safety data sheet on SM-102 says about SM-102. Listen to what it says. And you can check it. The Moderna vaccine has SM-102 in it. And hear what it says. This product is for research use. It is not for human or veterinary diagnostic or therapeutic use. Okay? It is suspected of causing cancer. It is suspected of damaging fertility or the unborn child. It causes damage to the central nervous system, the kidneys, the liver, and the respiratory system through prolonged or repeated exposure. I'm finishing now, I'm finishing. Let me just finish this. Right, to tell you how dangerous this substance is, let me just go to my last comment on it.
Okay.
Just let me finish this statement. Let me finish this. Listen to what it says.
Okay.
I'm going to finish.
I just want to say two things, please.
Yes.
The VAERS, the VAERS that you spoke about. VAERS is open, allowing anyone to report any possible side effect from the vaccine. It includes reports that might or might not be caused by the vaccine. It is not designed to identify cause and effect. Second point, there's a fact check about the SM-102 lipid in Moderna in routers that came out today. Okay? So we have to be careful about the sources that we read information. The fact check came out today about the SM-102 lipid in the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine.
All right, could we move to Shelley Woods with her question?
Shelley.
Please, and then we'll
Yes,
go back.
thank you very much, Mr. Lennox.
Thanks, Jason. Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Dr. Bowen, I heard you
Hi.
mention. I heard you mention many times that a slight fever and aches
Yes.
and body pains is quite a
Yes.
normal reaction that shows that your immune system is kicking in. But what
Yes,
happens if you take the vaccine and there is no outward sign that your immune
That's
system is kicking
great.
in? What does that say about the person?
No,
Really?
that's great. Yes, because for example, in my household, 1, 2, 3, 5 of us got vaccinated, and I'm the only one who had side effects after the first vaccine. Everyone, my mother, my mother-in-law, were all asymptomatic. So it's quite normal, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And Simple K. Simple K. Mrs. Ogawa, I saw your hand up.
mRNA, encoded spike protein. What does this do in the human body? And
Nothing.
what's the difference between DNA and mRNA?
Okay, so the DNA, so the M stands for messenger, the messenger RNA. So that's the one that relates the information. And of course, your DNA is like, that's your blueprint.
Okay.
So that's why when you look up, when you see all these tables and like BBC and all those networks have these wonderful tables, and they have like, they have by the Astrazeneca, they have DNA, and they have by the Moderna, and they have by the Pfizer, they have RNA. Remember how the Pfizer vaccine works, that it takes the gene, it looks at the gene specifically for the spike proteins and injects this gene, and this gene stimulates the cells to produce the spike protein with activate immune response. So a different mechanism.
Okay. Someone had their hand raised again, and we would like to thank Rosalind Alfred Dimas.
Yeah, Dr. Alfred Dimas from Scarborough Hospital. Thank you.
Thank you. She is assisting us in responding to some of the questions on the chat. Thank you very much, Dr. Dimas. There is a raised hand feature from someone.
Yes, Leanne.
Yes, we have a few well.
Okay, so hi, good evening, everyone. And I don't know if I heard this, but can you share with me, please, why it appears that when you take the vaccine, it activates or it brings on comorbidities? It appears like that. Why is that so? So most people who would have taken the vaccine, it's because if they are diabetic, you will see a certain type of reaction, heart attacks, etc. Can you just share why it appears, as I said, the word seems that it activates?
But I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that though. Okay. But you mean when, so for example, if you're diabetic, you're saying that it appears that if you take the vaccine, the diabetes
will activate and it causes death, heart attack happens. I'm not talking about the blood clot. I'm talking about it appears that whatever. Sometimes you have an underlying health issue, and it appears as though when you take the vaccine, it causes your body to react in a certain way, which leads to death in most cases. It seems that's what I mean.
Mr. St. Louis Taylor, I cannot answer that.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Okay, well, next time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I will write it down on my list.
Yes, thank you so much.
I will write it on my list.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so Doc, 2 more quick questions because we are cut the time.
There's another, Madam Host, there is another raised hand from Lauren Allen in the chat. Lauren, you could go ahead and ask a question.
Yes, good night, everyone. Doctor, I would like to find out, I know that in the United States, they have already started to do trial of the vaccine on children. Can you say, how soon we may be able to do that in Trinidad?
No, we will not use the vaccines on those under 18 years old, unless the vaccine undergoes all the trials and have been approved by the WHO for emergency use. So that's why our government has not allowed vaccines in the pregnant and the breastfeeding women, again, because there's limited data on safety and efficacy. So only when it's approved by the WHO for those under the age of 18, then it will be applied to our population.
So,
thank you, Laura.
It's a big question, I guess, but I mean, this is in your opinion.
Yes.
What would you say is the best vaccination for
There's
someone?
no best vaccine, and all the vaccines, what they do is the vaccine prevents you from getting severe disease. So every single, whichever one we have available, whether it's the Astrazeneca, or right now we have two. We have the Astrazeneca and the Sinopharm. They're both good. They're both the best vaccine.
We are supposed
So
to
it's whichever one we have available, because you have to always weigh risks versus benefits. And the fact that the vaccine was approved by WHO for emergency use, it means that they weighed the benefits with the risks, and they realize that the benefits outweigh the risks. So whichever vaccine is available, that's the one we use. Thank you, Syntyche.
No problem. One more quick question. I mean, I feel like you answered this so many times, but
that's okay.
Because somebody, just in case, welcome. If anybody new is here, by the way, welcome, welcome, chat room. If somebody has like severe asthma, like really bad, they're nervous, they're scared to take the vaccine. What would you suggest? Going to the doctor?
Yes. So I am asthmatic. I've had asthma so badly that I ended up in the high dependency unit. So what you do, if you're scared, if you're anxious, if you have 20,000 questions to ask about your asthma and if you would be a candidate for the vaccine, please call your pulmonologist, please call your internist, please call your general practitioner and ask them these questions. So just as they said in the Astrazeneca and even in the interim recommendations for the Sinopharm, if you have any immunocompromised disease, if you have HIV, if you have autoimmune disease, if you have any concerns, please talk with your doctor before receiving the vaccine.
Excellent. And what better time than to bring in the word? Because plenty pairs in here.
Thank
we
you.
spoke about that last week. We spoke about it last week. And I mean, this week, vaccination, people still, we scared, we anxious, right? So Father, could you please bring the word for us?
Good night once again to everyone. And we are using for our base the scripture from 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7. For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. I want to say to us tonight that inactivity, by staying home and not doing anything, causes fear. And when we are home and we are not doing anything and not taking part in anything, the isolation causes fear. And I looked very meticulously in my Bible, and I realized that anytime God's people had some difficulty, some thing to overcome, God always gave them an instruction. God's people were never left isolated doing nothing. He always told them to do something. For example, when Jonah had to go to Nineveh, what did the people have to do to repent? The people had to get down in sackcloth and ashes and begin to fast and pray. So although they were in a situation where God was going to destroy them, he said, your opportunity for redemption is to go down in sackcloth and ashes and pray. So you see, God's people were never left isolated doing nothing. Then the second thing I want to tell you about is in Numbers 21, where that's the wilderness, Jonah. And then we had Joshua. Joshua and his army had to conquer the walls of Jericho. And we teach this lesson in Sunday school over and over. When Joshua had to go against the walls of Jericho, the people did not just sit down. The instructions were to go around the walls of Jericho 6 times, once a day for 6 days. And on the 7th day, you go around 7 times. And then on the 7th time, you shout. So you see, God's people in every situation, in every difficulty, have something to do in order to gain the victory. And my third point to drive this home is when Moses was in the wilderness and they were going through an area that had a lot of serpents. And the people were being stung by snakes and they died. Moses made a brass serpent and hung it up there. And anyone who looked at the brass serpent was healed. So you see, we cannot stay isolated. We cannot stay back. We cannot say we are afraid of things and not do what God expects us to do. So for Jonah, the people had to go down and start God and ashes. For Joshua, they had to march around the walls of Jericho and shout. In Moses' time, they had to look at the brass image of a serpent and be healed. And I say today, what do we have to do today in this COVID-19 crisis as Christians? As our beloved Dr. Conyette said, we need to take the vaccine. We cannot sit back, sit in our homes and think everything will be okay. We as God's people, we need to take action. We need to make a move and take the vaccine. And I would like to submit tonight that at 2 p.m. today, I got my Astrazeneca vaccine, and I'm not asking anyone to do anything that I would not do myself as a priest. And I want to add 2 more things to my list of things that we have to do. We need to come together and form telephone teams where we call each other, where we pray for each other, where we uphold each other. We can't just stay home and do nothing. We must take action together as God's people in order to have the victory. The next thing I have here on my card, we need to form grocery teams because I cannot do it alone. I have been making groceries for senior citizens in my community for more than a year now. And I need people to come on board and help me. I've been also doing the same thing for the pharmacy, going and fulfill medical prescriptions. So I'm saying to you, let us go out and get the vaccine. Let us form phone teams and of 4 and 5, and each person have 10 numbers and call 10 persons every week and make sure they are okay. Because people in our church and our community don't know how to reach out. And if we could call them and say, hey, hello, how are you? I'm praying for you this morning. And they maybe say, I need someone to go and do my groceries. Tell them the church can do that. I need someone to go and fulfill my prescription. Tell them the church can do that. So you see, God's people in this time, we need to move, we need to be active, and we need to move forward so that we could rise above the fears. Just remember, inactivity breeds fear. And when we come together and work together, we will have the victory. Jonah had the victory, Joshua had the victory, Moses had the victory, and we too, today in Trinidad and Tobago, we too can have the victory. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Father. And just like that, we have definitely come to the end, but not without a huge, massive thank you to Doc. So, I mean, I don't know how else to say it, but we appreciate you so very much for all the information that you've given us. Yeah, I think people have a good understanding and able to go out and make wise
decision. Yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
No, thank you. We thank you. And now we're going to have Michael Lawrence closing us in the prayer. Michael Lawrence. How you? Your mic is muted, sorry.
Bluetooth disconnected.
Yeah, you hear me now, right? Yeah.
Loud and clear.
Yeah. Let's pray. Dear Lord, we give you thanks and praise for this wonderful day. Lord, we give you thanks and praise for the opportunity to be here and gather even under the circumstances. Lord, as we end off this session tonight, I pray that you continue to bless us as we take our rest. Pray that you send your Holy Spirit to guide us, to protect us over the night so that we can rise in the morning and continue to serve you. Lord, I pray for all those who are looking after our well-being, the doctors, all the first responders and everyone. Lord, I pray that you continue to be with them, protect their family and friends. So as we continue to fight this pandemic, we also remember those who are also battling with other illnesses apart from COVID-19. There are some persons who are dealing with the effects of the COVID-19. Pray that you be with us, continue to protect us so that we all can make it through. All this we ask in order, through the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. All right, everybody. Last but not least, we must thank you, our viewing audience. Thank you so much for staying until the end. We hope that you got everything that you needed and more from this conversation tonight. And just like I stated before again, please, there is a form or a link to a form in the chat box. Please feel free. We need your help to become better. So please fill out that participation form. We appreciate you. Next week, we have
Thank you. Hi, thank you. Just one quick thing, sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, just to let them know that so far we have Nigel Figaro in first place. He came first both questions. He's at 10 points. And we have a tie for third. Second, yeah. Shada Peters, Penos, and Father Mike. Our own Father Mike is tied for third. And that's it. Okay, so
good people getting on bad in the chat, boy. I love it. I love to see it.
Looking forward.
Do you have one more that you wanted to give them before we close out? Just with the band?
Our prayer is up to Jason. And they'll get his scores next week. We'll give them a reason to come on next week. Yeah.
Syntyche, what's happening next week?
That's what I was just about to relay that. So, everybody, next week is going to be exciting. We're going to be doing a session with Miss Alma Simpson, who's going to be doing art therapy. Art is a beautiful and powerful tool. And as this month, May is Mental Health Month, we all need to keep our mental health in check. Everybody. So I think it's excellent that we're going to be doing this. We will definitely post in the group. We have some materials that we'd love for you to bring when you're coming next week. It's going to be fun. We're going to be active. You're actually going to be doing some things. I can't wait. So take it away.
All right.
Dr. Bowen, one question. Where is your office located, Dr. Bowen? So if persons would like to find you.
Okay. I work at Cross-Concern Medical Center, which is in Coconut Drive, San Fernando. And the number there is 223-1357. I also see internal medicine cases at the Chamley's office, and that's on Kings Wharf, San Fernando. And the number there is 652-3555. And I also see some patients in Gasper in another doctor's private office, and the number there is 342-5577. So that's at Dr. Francis and Associates in Gasper.
Thank you very much, Doc.
Excellent. Are we putting up one more question so that people surely coming out next week, or one more question?
You. Put up question 3.
Just one last one, everybody, before we leave. You know, we have to end with a bang.
So far, Nigel is in the lead. He has to buy his own prize anyhow, so it doesn't matter, right? So Google, for me, this is a hard one. I don't know about you guys. I didn't know it, but good old Google, right, most of the times. Enter your answers as quickly as you can.
Quick question, Doc. Can you place your information in the info box so that everybody can find you at these different doctor offices?
Just finding out something. Is there a prize for answering these questions?
Of course there is, sir. Of course there is.
Father Michael Lawrence, of course there's a prize.
Of course there'll be a prize, but it's a trivia challenge. Today's prize is being sponsored by Mr. Figaro. So he'll get to know who he has to buy for next week, right? But the overall big prize comes at the end of the challenge, maybe after 4 or 5, if you don't know how things will run. So let's look forward, keep coming. The more you participate, the more points you can gather, and yeah.
All right.
Stick around.
Excuse me, please, may I say something?
Oh. Please.
I really appreciate it. You're the same sister. You're the same sister, you know. I talk a lot. I had to spend 9 weeks, and you're the same sister than me.
Okay.
Only like 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So whenever you're ready, you guys close, and when you guys close, I'll close the phone. It was fun tonight.
All right. Thanks everybody for attending tonight.
Thanks again, everybody. Come out next week, please. Let's have some fun together. Have a blessed
you.
And be safe, please. All right, let's listen to Doc. Let's be safe. Have a good one. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Doc.
Yeah.
Night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
The committee can stay online, please.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming.